and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Last Drop Africa podcast. My name is Alex Taremwa, and as you've been following, we are interviewing trailblazers, people who are doing amazing work combating climate change in their respective capacities. We've had some amazing young people in Uganda. We've had Geoffrey Mutabazi, we've had Faith Aweko, we've had Infonile co-founders Frederick Mujira and Anika McGuinness. So today we have a man on a mission. This is Ojok Okello. I'm sure you've read about him. He's not new to the media faces. He has been doing phenomenal work building one of Africa's, if not the world's, first sustainable rural city called Okere City. It's in Northern Uganda, quite a number of kilometers from the city in Kampala. Maybe 250 to be precise, but he can tell us more about it. Currently, he's in the United Kingdom pursuing further studies as usual, adding value to himself and done amazing work also in the development sector with Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Foundation, where he's not just run the Youth for Policy Fellowship, but also other programs like he's about to tell us about. Ojok, most welcome to Last Drop Africa podcast, and thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Well, I am a development professional. For the past 15 years, I've been working on the front lines of development work in rural Uganda, particularly in Northern Uganda, where I worked with local and international NGOs in the reconstruction of Northern Uganda after the destruction brought in by the Lord's Resistance Army conflict. So that's where I started my career. I worked with War Child UK, and my work specifically was helping to integrate ex-child soldiers into the community using the power of business. So I recruited, trained, and mentored hundreds of ex-child soldiers and worked around not only giving them business entrepreneurial skills, but also the financial means to start up their business. But then I got the opportunity to go to the London School of Economics, where I received postgraduate training in international development. I returned and worked with the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, which is a German political foundation in Uganda. I worked in Uganda and South Sudan, particularly, around subjects or questions of sustainable development, migration, but also governance, human rights, and rule of law. I co-founded Okere Community Development Project, which we call Okere City in Ojok District, Northern Uganda. So it's in a small village of 5,000 people. And what we are trying to do is create this holistic ecosystem of sustainable enterprises and projects that do not only work as nodes of services and product poems, but also creating employment opportunities. But we do this in a very self-sustaining, dignified, and sustainable manner. So over the past 4 years, when we started our work, we've been able to create educational services. So our community school gives opportunity to our children, 500 children in the village, the opportunity to come to school. And we also have an adult education center that gives opportunity to the adults, particularly women in the village, the opportunity to receive an education which they didn't get the opportunity to receive when they were children themselves. And we also invest in the Shea butter because Okere and all Ojok district is located on the Shea belt, and so the Shea trees naturally grow in that belt. So we work with a collective of women to collect the Shea nuts and add value to the Shea butter and launch it to the marketplace, amongst other things which I guess we shall share during the course of this podcast. But now I am in the United States, Humphreys Fulbright Fellow at the University of Cornell, which is an upstate Ivy League university here in the United States. So thank you for having me, Alex.
Now, let's start on this Shea belt, Shea trees, and the work that you have done and trying to get this tree back. There's been a lot of media coverage on how this tree has suffered severe depletion in recent times, and I think I did a story about some powerful people who are logging these Shea trees and ferrying them in forms of charcoal, and I understand even being exported out of the country. Tell me about feelings of the people on the ground as far as this tree is concerned? Why are you so connected to it? And I've used some of your products, by the way, the shea butter in my house. I even have some just collected from a store nearby. Benefits. Why are you so attached to it? And what work have you been doing to make sure that it doesn't go away?
So let's go back in time, centuries or many decades ago. The shea trees were sacred trees. Sacred in the manner that they were not only physical assets or physical natural resource that you saw, but they were also imbued with very cultural and spiritual significance. Our forefathers and mothers treated this tree as spiritual entities or spiritual assets within their landscape. It is important to note that among the Luo people of Northern Uganda, shea trees play significant roles. One of the roles is that we actually call it the tree of life. The tree of life because when a child is born, the first substance that gets on its body is shea butter, even before water. So when the umbilical cord is cut, shea butter is put immediately. One, it's believed truthfully so that it helps to heal the wound, but also make the umbilical cord to quickly remove itself. And then when the child is bathed after birth, they are smeared with shea butter because we believe that within shea butter are very strong spiritual and cultural significance. I guess what our grandparents didn't know was that shea butter is just so rich in essential vitamins and nutrients that the skin needs. But for them, they took it beyond that to give it a very special spiritual significance. Again, we call it the tree of life because during our lifetime, when we still breathe, we use shea butter not only for our skin, but for our hair, but also for food, right? So any food without shea butter for my ancestors wasn't really food. Food only made meaning if it was made with shea butter or shea butter added onto it. So in terms of nourishment, but also bringing people together. And then thirdly, it is very important is that when we die, again, the last substance that gets on our body is actually shea butter. Shea butter helps to keep the body longer if you don't want to bury the body, if you don't want to put there wasn't embalmment. Our ancestors used shea butter to keep the body as relatives come to give the last respect. But also when you pour shea butter like into the nose, into the mouth of a corpse, it helps to preserve it a little longer, not forever, of course. So that is why we call it the tree of life or the butter of life. And then what happened, of course, in Northern Uganda is there were conflicts, not just the Lord's Resistance Army conflict, there were also the Karimojong cattle raids that destabilized people. And then the people got extracted away from their homes, so they had to go either to Leira. So basically people flee. Yeah, and they would only return back 30 or for some people who ran away earlier, they only came back after 40 years. And when we came back, this entire belt were filled with shea trees. Now, it's important to understand that even for the Lord's Resistance Army, the rebels, the shea trees were very sacred, and the shea butter, to the extent that the Koine rebels never destroyed a single shea tree. They didn't destroy the shea trees because they believed that if you have conducted extrajudicial killings and then you smear yourself with shea butter through a ritualistic process, you cleanse yourself or your sin away. And in addition to that, other rebel leaders in Northern Uganda, like Alice Lakwena, for instance, also believed that if you smeared yourself with shea butter, and if her soldiers smeared themselves with shea butter, could even help to repel the bullets. I'm just giving you this context to let you understand the spiritual significance of this product. And this was way long time ago, before we started thinking about shea butter as an economic asset. But when people returned and people had lost their connection with the shea trees, what then happened is that people went on rampage and significantly decimated the population of shea trees. And they were doing this to make charcoal, right? And just to underscore that the shea trees make the best charcoal, right? There's no trees, indigenous or otherwise, that make stronger charcoal or better charcoal than shea trees. Remember, the shea trees can stay standing for hundreds of years. It can keep bearing fruits for up to 500 years. And the trees that were being cut were gigantic shea trees, so somebody would just decide to cut two huge shea trees and they would get enough money to take them through for months or even a year. Because of this, the shea trees were destroyed, so much so that the Forestry Authority in Uganda estimated that just between the year 2000 to the year 2020, up to over 80% of the shea trees cover on the belt, particularly in Pader, Agago, and Otuke districts, were destroyed. Now, that is an environmental catastrophe. And so when we started our work, it was very important that we center the operations of our work around making people understand the significance of this tree, because displacement had made them lose the cultural and spiritual attachment. But then what we had to do was make them understand that, okay, there are also economic values imbued within this product. So that's what we've been doing.
Amazing stuff. I was just coming to that actually. From our investigations, we found that there was an almost deliberate attempt to commandeer the shea trees in that belt by some powers, and the work you've done with Okere City to try and put up a resistance on that has been inspiring, so to speak. I'm curious to know, other than the education and the way that you create an environment where in this city almost all resources are self-sustaining, that the children grow up with this knowledge and skills from when they are little, like the ones who just graduated, I saw the pictures on the social media platforms, when they become actual elders and these griots of knowledge. How was your model of sustainability built? Like, what is it built? What's the structure of that? Would you be kind enough to share?
So what is important is that ownership is very important. And how do you facilitate an organic ownership structure? One is that you let people be involved, you let people participate, you consult with people, and you make sure that when ideas are generated by the people, then they become important agents in making sure that these ideas come to fruition or come to life. So, and that is essentially, what we do. We hold several community meetings, we have community days, we have very many social activities that on a weekly basis, bring hundreds of community members together. We have local committees, local community members, who represent other community members. And when we sit together, we come up with ideas and we agree together, right? And then we just make sure that we strengthen this trust that already exists, because we believe that trust probably is the only important currency that we have and that we must continue investing in to make sure that it is strengthened. And so when we do this, I've seen that community members become very interested and eager to participate in the activities of the organization. And again, for us, it's self-reliance is very important, because you can only rely on external assistance for so long. In fact, if you say that you want to wait for your work or your community to be uplifted only by some agents coming from the outside, then you would be doomed, because people from the outside do not have better understanding of the local context, of the challenges that people face, of the opportunities that are in the village. So the people in the local community must take the center stage. And so we noticed that our community didn't have a school. So we sat down together and agreed to start an educational initiative where we bring our resources together as a local community. So I said, as a project, this is what we could afford. We shall try to get salaries for the teachers. We will try to have a block, but then the children must eat, right? The children need scholastic materials. And so we must come together to make sure that we provide this. This is what we've been doing for 2 years now. And of course, it's not a smooth ride, but at least we have demonstrated that even with so little that we have within the community, still a lot can be achieved. And that is basically what we've been doing. And then we've just noticed that, people run away from villages because there are no opportunities in the village. So if we just provide a basic health service like we do through our health center, basic products, like salt, soap, sugar, these small things, are actually the things that take people to towns. In the process, they're spending a lot of time, a lot of money on transport, and yet they can easily get it, from the local grocery store that we have. And social and sporting activities, a football pitch, a running track, and all these, the things that young people need. If you just provide it, then it significantly gives them the reason to stay. And we believe that through this model we shall be creating a hub that continues to create opportunities, economic opportunities as well. I mean, we've been able to provide up to 25 jobs to young people, and most of these people were working in the towns, some in Kampala, and now they've returned back to the village to work. So these are some of the things that we've been doing, and we are quite hopeful about the future.
This conversation got so interesting, I almost forgot to mention that this podcast is proudly sponsored by Africa No Filter and the Mastercard Foundation, who have given us funds to speak to people like Ojok Okello, who we have today, people who are building amazing innovations through not just the spaces that they have, but also the knowledge that they have garnered over time to make Africa a model example of what you can do with the resources that you have. We're calling this theme Your Hand in Combating Climate Change, and that's where my next question is. Okere City has Ojok become a phenomenon in its own. Almost every year people pour down over there. There's an event that you have, I don't know if it's annual or it's just something you come up with. The guys come over there, they plant trees, they play board games. Tell us about that festival, if I would call it, and what impact, especially to the environment, you've been able to achieve through that.
Yeah, so every year we organize what we call the Okere Summit for Sustainable Development. And this is basically just a gathering of people who are working in sustainable development in one way or another. So people come to Okere just to see or have a witness of a practical experiment that is trying to holistically or simultaneously achieve very many sustainable development goals. And this ties to our 2020 strategy, which is built around the sustainable development goals. Now, we know that progress towards the sustainable goals globally is a big challenge because one of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also the war in Ukraine, and now we see what is happening in Palestine. So lots of resources are being injected towards stabilization, and also the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, took us significantly off track. So by 2030, a lot is going to be undone, right? And what we are trying to do is work towards demonstrating by 2030 that a small little village, very isolated on a semi-arid belt, tried its best to achieve up to 70% of the 169 indicators of the Sustainable Development Goals. So out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, our work is inextricably linked to up to 12 of those goals. We have indicators. We know that, by 2020, when we started, there was this number of children who are not going to school in the village. And we have an indicator of how many children shall have gone to school by 2030, right? We know that, by 2020, we just had these numbers of shea tree, and we know by 2030 what we shall need to have. Now, having these indicators enable us to have mechanisms in place to drive our mission. Let's just center around this for a bit. I have already mentioned that the village is located on a semi-arid belt. So already it receives just about 1,100 millimeters of rainfall every year. That is very little rainfall. And the problem is that it is not consistent. And now with climate change, the drought or the dry spells are longer. Resultantly, the farmers in Okere lose up to 75% of their agricultural productivity, meaning that if a farmer planted maize, they will only harvest 25% of the potential of the maize that they expected, agricultural production expectations. That means that a lot of work remains to be done. Like one of the things we did is I bought shea butter, nicely packaged shea butter from Kampala, from a supermarket in Kampala, and we had a community meeting, and I asked them, how much do you think this shea butter is? It was like 200 grams, and then most of them said 2,000 shillings. The highest amount was 8,000 shillings. And then the shea butter had a sticker on it, and it was 45,000 shillings. So when they saw this, they couldn't believe that this shea butter that they play around with,
they are looking at every day,
could fetch so much. Actually, the shea butter that we have is Uganda's only niche product. Did you know that?
No.
Of all the resources that Uganda has, whether it's gold, copper, I don't know.
It was there.
I think it's still there. But the only natural resource that Uganda can say, I am the only one in the world providing it, is shea butter. And in South Sudan. Now, the problem is that South Sudan, because of conflict, shea trees do not have roads. So most of the shea trees from South Sudan really do not find itself into the global market. Leaving Uganda as the only country that can supply Nilotica shea butter to the world. Destruction of shea trees significantly slashed. Many arrests were made in 2021 and in 2022 as well. But in 2023, just to tell you how impressive it is, in 2020, we had reported cases of up to about 100 people cutting shea trees in the village. But by end of last year in 2022, only 5 people had cut down shea trees. Of course, it's very easy to know if shea tree is cut because other people see, like you can't hide when you're cutting a tree. And also these trees are found in gardens, and so it's easy to know. The good news is that this year, in 2023, there is no recorded case of somebody cutting down a shea tree.
Zero so far. But
of course, this is just a village of 5,000 people, like a parish of 15 villages, 5,000 people. Maybe it does not contribute significantly to the bigger scope of things, but as a village, this is our small action. But in addition to protecting the shea trees that already stand, we also know that in order to make sure that the shea trees that were destroyed are brought back to life, we are also planting shea trees. So every year, as a small village again, we plant up to 5,000 shea trees. We are establishing what we call community shea parklands, and also giving seedlings to the farmers to go and plant in their compounds, in their garden. Our rescue are the shea trees. And that is why through Okere Shea Butter Cooperative Society, we are working with a collective of 200 women to collect the shea nuts, and we work with them. At the moment, we do not have a product like a factory, so we outsource production to a nearby facility, and then we We bring it back to the village where we package, and then we launch it to the marketplace. And just in 2022 alone, the Shea Butter Cooperative made a profit of $15,000, and these profits are given back to members as dividends, and we've seen that it has significantly improved household income. In fact, our data in 2020 showed that up to 98% of the households in the village were surviving on less than $1 a day. But for the 200 households, 70% of the 200 households that are part of the cooperative, you've seen the household income increase to up to $4. So this is progress, and it gives us all the reasons to continue investing in Shea Butter as economic transformation tool for our village.
My brother, thank you so much. This conversation can continue for another day. Passion that you have for Okere City and for responsible development, transformation, sustainability is clearly unmatched. I had to have you on this podcast, and thank you for making the time. Unfortunately, that's as far as we can go today. Hopefully next year during the summit, I'm able to come with my team and encamp there for a few days. I've been seeing all these pictures that some of my colleagues have been posting over time, and I'm feeling jealous. Mr. Ojok Okello, thank you so much. I have to release you to start your day.
Thank you very much, Alex. I appreciate it.
This is the Last of Africa podcast. We have to thank our sponsors, which is the African North and the Mastercard Foundation, for their support. We'll see you next week.